Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie. They're selling the lie. Say every voice counts, but watch who gets lifted. Some stories vanish, some get the spotlight shifted. Depends on what trends and what keeps them gifted. They're selling the lie. I won't believe them, I wanna believe, but truth's always stuck in between. Static and spin, drown the signal again. Nothing is what it seems. I wanna believe you, but every headline turns daylight into redesigned skies. Facts get twisted, context missing. We choke on the simplified alibis. Wanna believe you, but all I see is shadows where the answers should shine. The fact is fiction, conviction.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories.
Good morning, Maine. This is Chuck Ellis, and you are watching the Muddy Waters Podcast. The Muddy Waters Podcast exists to help the people of Maine better understand what is going on in our state by highlighting people from around our state, interviewing people, sharing their stories, including investigative journalism, which is not dead, thanks to the Maine Wire, and reporters like Jon Fetherston. So thanks, Jon, for joining us, as always.
Hey, good morning, Chuck. Always a pleasure to do the Tuesday morning update with you. It's always an honor to join you, so thanks.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, I feel like it's helpful to have like for people who maybe don't have a lot of time, but maybe, once a week they can spend 30 minutes listening to a podcast or something like that to be able to get, a quick snapshot update of like some of the nonsense that's happening in our state. Hopefully we get to a week where it's so boring and there's nothing to talk about. But the reality is that doesn't seem to happen. Not in Maine. I remember the old song about, from what is it? The Robin Hood, the cartoon Robin Hood movie, like where it's talking about sometimes the ups outnumber the downs, but not in Nottingham. I feel like that's
and not in Maine. Yes,
that's
not in
exactly
Maine.
right. Yeah. So what has been happening in the world of Maine? Obviously, outside we know last week we were on was the day that Janet Bowden had her special election, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
It wasn't, yeah. So that's something that's happened, but and I feel like there are a number of other things that you've been reporting on. So what's been going on in Maine that you've been seeing over the course of the last week or so?
Well, the biggest thing that's happened since the last time we had the opportunity to talk, and my words, it's pathetic. Janet Mills' 5 o'clock news dump on Friday night on her response back to Dr. Oz and the autism billing. If people in Maine haven't seen her response, they should stop and take a look. 10 seconds into her response, she's, just trying to discredit Dr. Oz as a TB doctor. I mean, he's a world-reclaimed, heart surgeon and doing a lot of stuff. And so Janet Mills' response back to the Trump administration about how autism billing in the state was handled, 5 o'clock on a Friday, so nobody could see it. Blaming, Dr. Oz because he, had a successful TV career and made a lot of money, a successful TV career, all to deflect the fact of the matter is that report showed 100% billing rate error. And the federal government wants to know why there's 100% billing rate error. And rather than, say, hey, mistakes were made, we've looked into it, Janet Mills went into this tirade of saying that all of her career she has fought fraud. Well, just take a look at what's going on. Take a look at gateway communities. Take a look at all of these NPOs with this massive fraud, 100% error rate. And you're going to sit there as the governor of the state, and then also at the same time use your platform to run for United States Senate and say that I have fought fraud my entire career. Governor LePage has come out and told stories about how he went to her as Attorney General and said, hey, there's a problem at Gateway years ago, before it became a big thing. Years ago there was MaineCare fraud. I want you to open up an investigation, and she ignored him at that time. So the hypocrisy of her saying, I fought fraud my entire career. Well, we need a new fighter, because fraud is rampant in Maine. Fraud is theft in Maine, and Maine needs a lot of help. And what could all of that money that's being stolen from the taxpayers and from, programs that need help, what could that do to make Maine a better place? And, here's the thing, and it's my prediction, and it's a prediction based on years of experience. The federal government's response to this is going to be brutal. They're going to say, I want my $24 million back, and I'm probably going to cut off more federal funding to you until you can prove to us that you are good stewards of our money. And people are going to say, oh, well, programs are going to be impacted. Well, bad behavior comes with consequences, people. Yeah. And Maine
liberals don't understand that.
No, and why?
Because they just feel so much compassion for the lawbreakers. Right? Like this is why you have so many of these people that end up eventually committing some sort of a violent crime, because they're like, oh, it would ruin their life if they actually had to suffer the consequences of their actions. And so they stay. Then that's the misplaced compassion of many people on the left, and say, oh, bad stuff happened to this person, and that's why they did what they did, and we don't want to ruin their life and create no opportunity for them. We're not. They did. They cut off their opportunity by continuing to break the law, but they don't see it that way. Their compassion and their empathy, whatever you want to call it, is misguided. And I love the word toxic empathy, because they're that, but that's their problem, right? Is they are being compassionate to the wrong people. Their compassion never ends to the criminal and to the lawbreakers. And even part of it is like, okay, this person did a bad thing, but we can't allow this person who is actually should be receiving the service to maybe not get the benefits because of this person. But the problem is, as you well know, if you don't actually hold people accountable, yes, there's going to be collateral damage, but it's just going to get worse. And there's going to be more problems and the ills that are created by allowing this problem to persist, because you're not policing it, because there might be some people who are nice, kind people who aren't doing anything wrong that might be negatively impacted, is going to ensure that there are more nice, kind people that are going to be negatively impacted by allowing this nonsense to continue. But that's part of the problem, I think, with I'll call it liberal logic. It's kind of an oxymoronic phrase, but
well, you can already see what's coming when the federal government and the Trump administration and Dr. Oz and J.D. Vance, the vice president, who's now leading the war on fraud in the nation, when those accountabilities come, and they can't get here fast enough today, but I would anticipate something by the end of the week. Janet Mills is then going to play the victim card and go, oh, the Trump administration is targeting me, and oh, the Trump administration is, penalizing, low-income seniors on MaineCare. No, Governor Mills, you caused this. And because of your lack of leadership and a lack of accountability on these NPOs and these nonprofit organizations, and not overseeing MaineCare and not investigating them, it comes with consequences. And yes, there unfortunately there'll be some collateral damage, and some people will lose benefits. But the government will fix that as well, though, too. But here's the bottom line: you're in charge, Governor. And, a fish rots from the head down, and you didn't do a good job with this, and the accountability is coming, and it can't get here quick enough as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's people are crazy. So we did the show last week, and you talked specifically about that. And we had one post that kind of went viral, specifically talking about the MaineCare fraud. And somebody like responded on, I should say Maine Viral, not viral. There weren't a million views, right? But Maine Viral, which, they had, somebody commented and said, government forms are hard to fill out, and it's like, okay, sure, so so like we should expect some errors, but not 100% error rate. Like it's so silly how people just want to defend the government, which, again, as Cider, who's watching, thank you, Cider, points out, 100% error rate should result in jail time, prison. That sounds good to me. Whoever's in charge of that, allowing that to happen, continuing to fund. I mean, with 47 million or something, 46 million, 24 of that, I guess, coming from the federal government, in funding that was found to be, have errors, 100% error rate. That's pretty crazy. But people just, again, we have to find the people who are persuadable, because ultimately we can't allow this to continue. And there are, obviously, as we're kind of pointing out, there are people that are just going to defend the government, or just going to defend Janet Mills. It was kind of crazy. I was going door to door recently, and to get signatures for somebody to get on the ballot, and somebody was like, I think Janet's done a great job. And I was like, I'm just going to let that pass because I got a signature, but like, what?
How can, I mean, everybody can always do better. And I think even if you're a good governor, you can always do things better, or wish you hadn't said this or done that. But what do your eyes tell you? I mean, yesterday I was driving around Portland, and it was a beautiful day, and it looks like today is going to be another beautiful day. It's already pretty warm outside. But, I'm driving down through Portland, and what do I'm seeing homelessness. I'm seeing drug addiction. I'm seeing feces on the street. I'm seeing, people passed out in front of the post office. And, I sit there and go, how have we allowed this to happen? How have we allowed, the people to be, like not taken care of? And, if you're an elected leader and you're getting off of 295 like I am, and you're just driving, you go do your job, and you see all of this, and you sit there, and you have to sit there and go, what is going on here? And imagine if you're a business owner every day cleaning, human feces off of your doorstep, before you can even open up your business, and then you hear, there's hundreds of millions, if not close to $1 billion of fraud being run by your government, but nobody's talking about it. And so is the system working? Is the leadership working in the state? So when somebody sits there and says, to Chuck Ellis, hey, I think Janet Mills is doing a good job, can you give me just one example? Because I can't give you one example right now. And it has nothing to do with Democrat, Republican, if a Republican allowed this, I would still have my same, views on it. Like, what? You don't have to believe me. Just tell me what your eyes see, and you can't tell me that your eyes find, acceptable what you see. Bullet holes in Lewiston, human feces in Monument Square in Portland, drug use, open air drug use in Bangor. You can't tell me that things are going properly if you see all of this, because I remember America when you never saw this. Yeah, I'm an old guy, but but still, I'm not that old,
Yeah, I don't know what I have a hard time understanding what he could possibly be talking about. But I think part of it is related to, the fact that that they have Trump derangement syndrome, right? Like, so they're upset about Trump, and Janet Mills is saying some things back at Trump. Or like, one of the things that's so interesting, especially among the older population, right, is that they think that Janet Mills kept them safe. We've talked about this before, but they think that Janet Mills kept us safe during COVID. And for some reason, there's this nostalgia around that. And I think there's an appreciation from the elderly population in Maine for her for having done that, that they just feel defensive, which is probably also where a lot of Nirav Shah's support is coming from. He posted it. I thought it was really funny because, like, we talk a lot, we joke in the Republican circles a lot about how all these No Kings rallies are filled with, people who were released from the old folks home for a day. And then you look at Shah's photo, and literally I was trying to find one person in the photo or video or whatever it was that he posted about his town hall, and he was excited by how many people were there. I was trying to find one that didn't have gray or white hair. And there was zero. Right. And it's all related to this nostalgia around the person who protected them. And again, when you, like, Janet Mills does dishonest things, and apparently people care more about, are you still there, John? John, I think we lost you. But in the meantime, while we wait for John to come back, we during the COVID days, John, are you there now? Oh, lost him again. All right. Anyway, so it's funny that people are more willing to have a person who does bad things than somebody who occasionally says things that we don't like. So part of the reason that people don't like Donald Trump, and part of the frustrations that people had with Paul LePage were that they said mean things, right? And the reality is, who cares? In all reality, is it worse that somebody says mean things, or is it worse if they do create bad policies that make people's lives worse? And people seem to be more interested in having candidates and representatives who seem nicer on the camera than people who actually put in place good policy. So, John, you may have missed, but I was basically saying that, like, I think part of the nostalgia around Janet Mills is that she doesn't say as many quote unquote inflammatory things, as our former governor, Paul LePage, it is argued by people, and President Trump. And I think this is part of what some of your older crowd in particular is gravitated to in somebody like a Janet Mills, and why they appreciate her, because they unfortunately, they're seeing their property taxes rise and they're frustrated about that. But they see her, probably, this is my assumption based on conversations, as being more stately, and they're less concerned with policy, which actually has more of an impact on their life, than they are with the potential mean things that people say.
Oh, you're 100% correct. And, every one of those people, but the one thing that you have to be aware of is that every one of those people in Dr. Shah's videos are going to vote, though. They are going to vote. Yep. So, and that voting, the senior voting bloc are going to vote. They are going to think that Dr. Shah, if you believe that Dr. Shah kept you safe during COVID, we can have that conversation, because I'll tell you that he didn't. I'll tell you that he allowed people to die, alone, and he affected your kids' quality of education, and he misrepresented, facts during COVID. But if you, still like Dr. Shah, you are going to vote for him. But that's where people just really need to, do their homework. And it still amazes me after all of these years that people aren't going to do their homework. And, the facts matter. The facts do matter. And, just take a look at it. But getting back to, Janet Mills is a lot of things, but one thing she's not is she's not stupid. She knows how to play the system. She knows how to play to it. I mean, you don't get elected, twice as governor and be a candidate for United States Senate by being stupid. But what she is she's lazy. She doesn't think the laws apply to her, and her whole bully pulpit that she's used over the years to get her to where she is, I think is eventually now going to backfire. I don't think she wins the nomination. It's mind-boggling to me that Graham Plattner is running. I don't agree with his platform, but he's running a successful campaign. And does Janet Mills want to go run a Senate campaign when she's going to be called in front of the Congressional House Oversight Committee to explain fraud in Maine? So it's going to be fascinating if she even stays in the race for the United States Senate, because she can't run for the United States Senate and be having to. Can you imagine Janet Mills having to testify in front of Congress And I think that's coming. I really do. I think it's coming. She won't do well in front of them. I don't think she has a grasp of how bad things really are, and number two, her personality will not shine in a situation like that. So, I mean, I'm getting the popcorn ready already for it because I'd love to see it happen. But I mean, I'd be interested to like, what do you think? I mean,
She
can't
could
do well
surprise
in front
us.
of Congress. You really think
Well,
so?
okay, so like one of the things that makes me think that, right, is like if she's got the right prep team going in, this is actually could be the perfect opportunity for her to take back ground. Like think about Kamala Harris. How often did you see her put two coherent sentences together?
Still waiting.
Right. But if you remember the debate that she had with Donald Trump, she actually, I mean, to the point where everybody was suspecting that she had like somebody in her ear telling her what to say. Cause it was like, what in the world? Like, I'm not saying she was saying like really intelligible things, like coming up with policy that made sense, but she was putting sentences together in a way that was like, I've never seen her do this before. Like similar to like how like Joe Biden, Joe Biden did really bad in his last debate, but he did a lot better than he did in the interviews because he was on so much medication they'd put him on or whatever. They clearly had done something to Kamala to prepare her for that. So that she actually didn't sound as big of a fool, and it didn't hurt her as much as like her interview with Brett Baird, for instance, right? So I look at things like this and I say, okay, I could imagine that somehow Janet gets prepped for this and she goes in there and says some stuff, and it actually is her campaign. Her campaign is, I'm being attacked by the evil Republicans in Washington, and I'm standing up to them, right? Now, I don't know. But like I could see that. And that would actually be a great opportunity for her to gain some ground back against Plattner. But again, I do think she did not do well in her confrontation with Trump when she said, "I'll see you in court," because like she just, I mean, in my opinion, she just sounded like an idiot. We're following whatever it is, state and federal law or whatever. And Trump's like, we're the federal government, like the Title IX is actually under our jurisdiction, and that's what's at play here. And she just is like, I'll see you in court. I think it was like reflexively because she didn't have anything thought up that she would say. So if she goes in unprepared, I think she sounds like an idiot, and I think it dooms her options. But like the same people that were propping up Kamala Harris are going to be looking to prop her up. Schumer is behind Janet Mills. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. I hope that she gets hauled in front of there, and I hope that they ask. I mean, one way or another, like they're going to be brutal to her, regardless of what her responses are, right? Because that's watching those Senate oversight and other congressional oversight like meetings, like the Republican senators in particular and House reps as they grill people. It's kind of fun to watch as they're like asking like clear questions and they don't get clear responses. And I'm assuming I wouldn't be surprised, in fact, if some of the people ask her whether or not biological men should compete in women's sports, just as a baseline to know what your reason for logic and reason is. I don't know. It would be fun to see her response to that.
I would agree with your comment that they are fun to watch, but I do think now, because cameras are so allowed in there, that they do have become like kind of grandstanding for elected officials on both sides of the party.
100%.
I like a good grandstanding event or a good, gotcha moment. But what I really care about at the end of the day is not the soundbite that you can make go viral on your, social media. What I want and what Maine needs, in my opinion, is accountability. Okay.
Yeah.
You've got fraud. We've identified the fraud. So now here's what we're going to do. We're either going to arrest you, we're going to subpoena you, we're going to, indict you. We're going to come in and take over your program, or more importantly, we're going to cut off money until you can prove that you can do it. Because the sound bites are fun, but the reality is, at the end of the day, we need accountability. And I know that they're looking at Minnesota, they're looking at California, they're looking at Maine and Massachusetts. But until somebody is held accountable, and what Janet Mills is trying to do, in my opinion, is she's just trying to kick the can down the road till the November election. Because if Democrats get power back again, she's not going to be held accountable, because it'll just turn into impeachment talk and we'll just cover up the fraud. Tim Walz is just waiting until November because, he's not rerunning. He's just trying to get out of office in Minnesota. Gavin Newsom is going to try to run for president so he can cover up the fraud in his state. But, when are the people finally going to rise up? When's the next revolution? Because it's bad. It's really, really bad. And it's not just bad in Maine. It's bad all across the country. There's fraud in Ohio. There's fraud in California. There's fraud everywhere. And how have we allowed fraud to just become so, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Like, you should worry about it because it's theft.
Well, and I think, there are a couple of things that I would say have happened. One is, like, obviously the leadership, the people the elected representatives in our country have failed us, right? And I mean that, like, regardless of party.
Both
and this
sides,
is not to cast shades. I know a lot of people in the Maine House, Maine Senate, who are working hard to try and bring about accountability. Obviously, they're in the minority right now. I've never been involved in politics and had Republicans not be in the minority, so I can't speak to how they behaved when that brief period of time back in, like, I think 2010 to 2012, where we had the majority in both houses. I do understand that people are concerned that we didn't do enough. But like so the people that I know have worked really hard. Just in the minority, it's hard to do much of anything. But in general, both sides, our elected officials have failed us. And one of the biggest problems is that, like, kind of the bar that it seems to me that some of the Republicans are shooting for is to be better than the Democrats, which is like a really low bar.
Yes. It is. It's a very good way of even visualize it. It is a very low bar. Yeah. We don't need better. We need leaders. We need leaders.
Right.
And, and maybe, the worst thing that ever happened to politics was social media, because a lot of times now what I see is more people being more interested in going viral, like you had said earlier, or being a, social media influencer rather than being a leader. I've been in a lot of school committee meetings or, selectmen meetings, or, in the bottom of, of town hall, or in the basement of the local library, hashing out $1 million budgets over school committee. That's where you see leadership, like where you toe the line, but I see a lot of politicians nowadays on both sides, both sides of the argument. Hey, I posted this on social media and I got, X amount of likes on this and everything. Yeah, but what are you doing about the fraud? What are you doing about the programs that aren't working? What are you doing about the drug addiction and I don't care about your social media. I care about results, and I don't know. I mean, maybe you don't agree, but I mean, social media, I think, is taking people that want to be celebrities and push people out that could truly be leaders and influence makers, and push them to the sidelines and say, hey, why would I want to get involved in that? Because, it's a fair question. Why would somebody want to get involved with that? And, you look at Trump, Trump could never be bought. Trump could never be done, could be, bought by, outside influences because he had more than enough money. But there's only one Trump. So are other people going to step up and say, listen, I'm going to toe the line, sometimes in politics, you have to live alone by yourself on an island, and it takes years for people to realize, oh, Chuck Ellis was right. Jon Fetherston was right. But you got to go through a lot of stormy weather before people finally realize that. And that's where you find your true leadership. You're not going to find your true leadership on TikTok,
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's a combination. I think social media plays a part, to your point, but I also think that part of the problem is that we have just, it's kind of, I sometimes have quoted and will probably quote again a line from the movie V for Vendetta. It's one of my favorite movies. And, in it, V is like speaking to the people and he's talking about the problem, what happened. And he's like, obviously there are those who are more responsible than others and they will be held accountable. But if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror. I know why you did it. And so, like, part of the reason I bring this up is because, like, how do we get here? We could blame social media, we could blame Mark Zuckerberg and all these other people, but ultimately it's that the people of America have gotten lazy. The people of America have allowed the mainstream media to distract them. I also love the movie Gladiator, and one of the senators there is talking to the other one, and he says, talking about Commodus, the evil emperor, he says he knows what Rome is. Rome is the mob. Conjure magic for them, and they'll be distracted. Take away their freedom, and still they'll roar. The beating heart of Rome is not the marble of the Senate, but the sand of the Colosseum. He'll give them death, and they will love him for it. And so, like, for us, we've allowed ourselves to be distracted by sports, by Netflix and chill, by all these activities that we get ourselves busy in our local, in our communities that are not necessarily bad, but they're distracting us from some of the core important things, such as ensuring that we maintain freedom, ensuring that we have policies in our town, for instance, that are actually beneficial for the town, right? People are not involved in local politics. We've had a group of people that are going door to door across the state to try and help get Republican gubernatorial candidates elected. Now, who's more impactful on my life, the president of the United States or the governor? It's the governor. John, I think your volume turned off. I don't know what happened. I can't hear you. But maybe you can, exit and come back if you could. Maybe that'll work. I don't know. But yeah. So, as I was just saying, oh, here we go. John is back, I think. Take away your freedom and still so anyway, we've allowed ourselves to be distracted, and the governor is obviously far more important. John, can you, I can't hear you, I don't think. Still, I'm not sure what's happening. So people care more about what's going on with the president. We've had people going door to door to try and get Republican gubernatorial candidates on the ballot, and we're having people say, I only vote in presidential elections, as though that's the place where they have the most impact. That's what they believe. And the truth is, where you have the most impact is in the smallest election. And the school board and city council races and things like that. John, are you here? I don't know what is going on. So anyway, that's the reality is it's the smaller elections that have more of an impact, but people don't want to be involved in that. So we, the people, have made the error of allowing ourselves to be distracted by what is going on in Washington, D.C., rather than what is happening in our backyard. And again, this is, I'm going to keep saying this on the podcast, but this is why we exist. This is why the Maine Wire exists, and other people around the state of Maine, like the Unquire, are trying to get people to pay attention to what's happening right around them. Because if we do not regain this sense of local civics and paying attention to what's happening locally, we will, and we're headed in this direction, lose our country. Does social media play a part in this? Absolutely. But we ourselves allow ourselves to be distracted by what's going on and not pay attention and not hold media. Like, media companies make money based on viewership. Whether it's like people donating, like Soros funding them, right? Or whether it's them selling ads, regardless, money comes into those places because they get viewership. If we, the people, said, you're not actually reporting on things that are that matter as much to my life, I'm going to stop watching you. I'm going to stop reading you. I'm going to stop looking at those reels. If we did that, the money would stop and the media would have to adjust. One of the things that happened is CNN is actually not a great example, but a decent example of this, where they have actually pulled back from being the far left organization that they were. And part of what they're still far left, by the way, they're still more left, but they intentionally pivoted to trying to appear more centrist, and that's Scott Jennings. I think this has caused him to rise to fame, and you see all these clips of him countering people on CNN, and it was because they were losing money. Nobody was watching their show. The viewership went down, and so they pivoted. If we, the people, continue to take away our viewership and stop reading the articles that are focused on stuff that we have so little control over. Look at the case in Lewiston, Janet Bowden, right? She lost by 70 votes, 69 votes, actually,
Something
right?
like that, yeah.
And and had 300 registered Republicans actually show up to vote out of I can't remember if it was 1,900 or 2,200 registered Republicans in the district, right? If we were paying it
2,200, yeah.
Yeah. So she easily could have won. If Republicans just said, "Oh, I care about local politics. I'm paying attention." And so yes, social media plays a part, John, but I think it's here. It's us as a people deciding we're not going to have a revolution if we can't even stay up to date on what the heck is happening. It's something as small as paying attention to what's happening in your school board, one that, by the way, has been going viral, when in social media, I think Unquire and the Maine Wire have done a good job of highlighting stuff that's going on in Lewiston. So, if you're from Lewiston, how are you not paying attention to what's going on in Lewiston at this point? And yet people aren't. And they clearly didn't think this was important enough to get out to vote. And I think part of the problem, as I said back earlier, and I'll let you reply, but is that we, I think there's a lack of love for the Republican Party, even among Republicans, because of the feeling like we don't get enough done. And I'll just briefly mention a couple of things that Cider, who's been blowing up the chat, has been saying, is that millennials and Zoomers are essentially at a place where they just have less and less faith in our government. And so they're largely not, they need to be convinced essentially to care enough to be able to show up to vote.
Well, I agree with everything you said. I mean, your local government, if you're, select board, city council, mayor, planning board, school committee, they have 100% more impact on you and your family than the president of the United States does, or Congress or Senate, because you could change the curriculum in your school. They could do a zoning variance where now tractor trailers come down in front of your house. Your garbage doesn't get picked up every week. Planning board could affect your, property value. So local government and paying attention to local government is so much more important than what the president of the United States is going to do today or tomorrow or next week. But if you're not paying attention to your own backyard and a missed opportunity to put somebody good up in Augusta to represent you, then shame on you. Shame on you. And if people aren't going to get involved, then you get what you get. You get bullet holes inside of houses in Lewiston. You get, open air drug use in Bangor. You get homelessness encampments in Portland under bridges. That's what you get when you don't vote, and it's a very cliche, thing. But Republicans elect Democrats by not voting. And when do you reach the tipping point and say enough is enough? I don't want fraud. I don't want crime. I don't want bullets in my community. And until people start doing it, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Well, is there anything else that you think is really important for us to discuss before we say goodbye until next week?
Well, stay tuned, because I do think, next week we'll have an explosive update, because I do think the federal government will, and I pray that it's the case, will come back and hold Janet Mills and her administration accountable for the MaineCare fraud that's going on. And but meanwhile, people just got to get involved. Even just go, by town hall, ask questions, look at your city or town's website and just find out what's going on, and look at some of the agendas. Sometimes the meetings are long, but with Zoom nowadays, you can get involved. You can, or if just know what's on your city agenda. It takes 2 minutes to go to your city's website or town's website and just look at what the next city council agenda is. Something might grab your eye and you might say, hey, what is this? And it's not that hard to do in today's, everybody's got a phone. Just go check it out and know what's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, every town has those things posted. And don't do it alone though. Like this is where like getting involved in like a local Republican committee, or whether it's you and your neighbors or whoever, but work together to keep up to date on what's going on, because not everybody's going to like be able to go to every city council meeting or every school board meeting.
Right.
But if we have people that are focused on that we're connected to, that are really they can keep us informed as well. We don't have to do this alone, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel and all that other kind of stuff. There are ways to go about this that don't require us to take too much. I mean, first of all, this doesn't take much time anyway, but it isn't not going to require us to take too much time to pay attention to what's going on in our local community. And I think one of the things that's beautiful about that is when that works well. One of the problems is we don't trust our elected legislators in Washington, right? Well, we are so far removed from them. But what if we actually knew and were connected with our city council, school board, our local reps, right? So the smaller those people are, the closer they are to you, like the school board and city council. Those are people that you can actually know. Well, those people will eventually run for legislators and senators in this state. And then those people will know. So there's a way for us through these relationships to have a better sense of who we are potentially electing, because most of the time we're pulling from the pool of already elected people, like people who end up running for, governor or senator or House rep are generally, not always, people who are already involved in politics, or the people who are involved in politics will at least get to know them, because they're always going to come around trying to court their vote. So if we want to ensure that we're electing the right people nationally, the best way to do that is to get involved locally.
100%. And to read the Maine Wire.
That's exactly right.
MaineWire.com. Yep.
Read and follow the Maine Wire, obviously, and then also like, share, subscribe. Any good content videos. Comments are really helpful for those silly algorithms that the social media companies present. Like, share, and subscribe to the Muddy Waters podcast. If you want to sip good coffee and enjoy it, you can get a Muddy Waters podcast coffee mug at muddywaters.us.
Wow.
You can actually even buy Clear Stream coffee there if you want, because we're the politics in Maine is muddy waters in our country, really, but we're trying to bring you the clear stream of what's actually going on, so you can drink Clear Stream coffee, check it out. All right, thanks again, John, and thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back here tomorrow. We have a state Senate candidate who is running here in Cumberland, who is got a primary. Peter Violette is going to be coming on. Hopefully at some point in the near future, we'll have his Republican opponent, because there's a primary here also on the podcast. But you're going to hear from Peter Violette and find out why he's running for District 26. We'll see you back here tomorrow. And thanks again, John. We'll see you back next week.
Thanks.